Chapter 14 Double Dog Dare. Nana, talking to the host, said, I hit my 30s and life seemed to shift into overdrive. I was running with the devil and had no cares. I took on the feminist ideology that I was a strong woman, but in reality I was weak and broken. What was going on then? The host asked. I had begun an affair with a coworker and was convinced it was my true love. I felt that I was in love with this man and had fallen out of love with my current husband. I knew what the television was telling women, that if you're not in love, then it's not your true love. We all have a soulmate, and being in love forever was the key to knowing who that would be. We had all those television shows, even male-led shows, telling us that love was an emotion. You feel it in your heart, and if you felt sad, it was depression, and you needed a pick-me-up pill to help out. So then they had televisions and doctors working together. We could medicate for everything, and all would be good. Sigmund Freud was another famous name they liked to throw around to make women accept demonic spirits. Freud has said that snakes in a dream were a sexual frustration, and oh boy, did I have many dreams about snakes. Little did I know that I had a nocturnal demonic spirit that would come on me nightly and seduce me sexually and emotionally. This demon had me convinced that dreaming of other men and sex was normal. The whole secular world was telling me this was normal. I chased these dreams looking for that perfect man in my dreams, which led to many affairs and 2 divorces. My parents had a tumultuous marriage. They fought day and night over the smallest of things, but remained married until they both passed. Over 50 years of marriage, and yet all my siblings, including me, have been divorced. Talk about a confusing family life. My first marriage to Lonnie was not favored by one of my sisters, Linda. She was constantly in my ear telling me how she felt about him. She put a crack in the foundation that made me start doubting my marriage. She would tell me I could do better, and I thought a lot about what she told me. She had also been the sister I was the closest to growing up. Being older, we had one sister in between us who always seemed to be more of the world. My mother used to say that she was like my father's mother, always dressed up with lots of makeup and cared how the world saw her. I never met any of my grandparents, but the pictures show my grandmother Leona in a party dress. My mom said that was her daily wardrobe. If you recall, Linda had had her first child when she was 16 and got married. She soon had 2 more children, and I was her babysitter. From the age of 3, I have been an aunt, so adding in 3 more children was just more birthday parties and a bigger Christmas. Even though we were a dysfunctional family, we gathered for birthdays, holidays, and weekends in the summer. We had a huge family with my aunts, uncles, and cousins, not to mention all my nieces and nephews. I was the babysitter for Linda's boys. However, they were like my own. Many times I would give them gifts from my parents because I felt like they needed them. Linda and I had fun when we were younger. She could sew and would make my Halloween costumes. We would stay up late and play poker and Yahtzee, still my favorite game. She and I had a blast doing things that were not good. She was my sister, and her guidance was not exactly parental. One late night, I found myself what I thought were balloons, and she suggested we go out and put them on the antennas of the cars in the apartment complex. This apartment complex was very shady. It had been an old motel in town and converted into apartments. Most places she lived in were rental assisted, and no place for a 13-year-old to be running around in the late hours. But she suggested it, and of course, I ran out laughing, putting it on all the cars. She convinced me when I was around 11 to go as a grasshopper for Halloween. I gave in and she made a costume. I had on a green leotard with green tights and a set of green wings. She told me to go out and fly around in the yard. As I walked out the door, she locked it and began laughing, so I flapped around the trailer and in front of the others until she let me back in. This was the norm with her. She seemed to like to humiliate me in any way she could, and I thought it was love. Since I was the youngest, I had only 2 sisters I remember living in my childhood home, Linda and Tabitha. They both liked to get away with things, and I was my dad's sleuth. They were mean to me, and so if I got some dirt on them, I was happy. One of the best ways to get information was from their notes from their friends in school. Since they were only 3 years apart, they were both way older than me, and notes were their secret. I used to always read their notes and put them back perfectly so they did not get suspicious. I would then report anything I deemed as punishable to my dad. I got caught one day reading the notes, and my sisters were mad. They then began tearing up their notes, and this did not stop me, as I would piece them together to read and report. We grew up in a small town that had been an active area during World War II. There was an old railroad warehouse behind my childhood home. The area was rebuilt around the 1920s after a major fire in 1916 took out most of the town. We still had pastures and cows in town in the late 70s, and there was so much more to explore. Since my sisters were older, they would go explore with their friends and leave me at home. One day I begged to go with them. I wanted to see where they went. I remember we walked the railroad like it was out of the movie, and it was a good day. On the way back to the house, my sisters decided it was time for me to pay the price for getting to hang out with them. The pasture behind our home had a few cows and was on a shortcut to our backyard. As we were walking back, me high on the fact that I had a good day, Linda stopped and told me to lick this. Looking down, I saw a salt block. If you do not know what that is, it is a block of salt that cows lick. Looks like a huge ice cube with cow slobber all over it. They told me it was brand new and no cows had licked it yet. Likely story. I was a double dog darer. If they double dog dared me to do anything, I would do it because I knew that was what they wanted to accept me. Tabitha and Linda double dog dared me to lick it, and I did to be accepted by them. Our neighborhood was a great place to explore, as I mentioned, and there was an old infirmary that was next to our home. I liked that building. It had huge steps that went up to glass doors. It was on a hill, so it seemed so tall to me. It had a fire escape stairs on the back side that we would climb on, and the back of the building had a sloping driveway that we would ride our bikes down all the time. I hung around with my neighbors, two boys that were my age. One had sisters the same age as my sister. The other one had moved away and left me and Kevin. He was a year older. We both knew many other children in the neighborhood, as there was a government-assisted housing complex at the end of our road. It was new and had so many people. Some of them were temporarily to get back on their feet, and some were there for a while. There were even children with grandparents raising them. It was very diverse and was one of my favorite places to hang out and play with all my schoolmates. Kevin's house was on the corner and across the street from the old infirmary. One day I was exploring the old infirmary. I found an ice pick in the grass out front. It was rusty and interesting. I remember sitting on the side of Kevin's yard with him and my two sisters showing them the ice pick. I was giving a great story of how it came to be when a friend of ours pulled up on his brand new bike. He was closer to Tabitha's age, but apparently my sisters found fault with him. We were chatting it up, and Linda told me to use the ice pick to stab the tire on my friend's bike. Now, I thought she was playing when I heard those words. I double dog dare you. Tabitha repeated the words, and I knew they were serious. Even against my best judgment, I popped that tire. I remember him, my ex-friend now, began crying and pushing his bike back to his grandparents' home where he lived. My sisters took off towards the house to tell Dad what I had done. I remember looking at Kevin in the ice pick and throwing it as far as I could back to the grass from which it had come, and I sat there waiting for my dad. It did not take long before the grandparents showed up at our home. They were talking about how we owed them a new bike. My dad was not happy. They soon settled in on a new tire, and my dad told me to stay out of his sight until he came up with the punishment. You see, my sisters and brothers got spankings with the belt. I had witnessed this many times. My dad had a way to undo his buckle and whip off his belt in just one quick motion. They were not in anger, and most of the time it was like three swats. However, I had been spared all those years. I did not know if my time was up for my first spanking. I remember sitting in the yard all the rest of the afternoon waiting on my punishment. Soon dinner came, and I had to go in and eat. My dad, still silent, did not speak to me for a couple of days. I never received a spanking, but the silence was so much more. I asked him to spank me, to get it over with, but he refused. The silence was my punishment. I did not like sharing a room with Tabitha. She snuck her boyfriend in the windows at night, and before Linda left, I would sleep with her. After Linda moved, I got my own room and found freedom from my sisters. Tabitha was no better of an influence than Linda. My parents being older must have been the reason why I was left to my siblings for guidance. Not that my parents were neglectful. They did their own thing. I would take vacations with them and enjoy birthdays and holidays, but the day-to-day life was not interactive. I was a straight-A student and in the band, and that was expected for me to continue through high school. However, that was not my plan. Going into high school, I was put into all the honors classes. I had never really been into studying before, so it was not an easy thing to maintain A's. In my freshman year, I changed all my classes to basics and asked to work at the age of 14. My mom took me to the judge, and as long as I did not fail, I could start working. So I did.